Good? Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Yes, seems okay. Okay. Yes, it's on. Okay. Well, good morning. I don't know about you, but I am a little nervous this morning. So, so thank you very much for coming. My name is James Mccoskey. I'm the film archivist for Francis Ford Coppola, and I've been with him about 20 years now. I went to film school. I'm glad to see that the FIOF is here, and students from UCSC. UCSC is where I actually went to film school. And I went to learn film archiving at the University of East Anglia. So I welcome you guys for joining us this morning. To begin, I'm going to do a little brief introduction before we talk about The Godfather. But my company, American Zoetrope, was founded in 1969 by George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola and a bunch of other white guys. But some pivotal ones, John Milius and Walter Murch. These people didn't want to make films inside Hollywood. They wanted to make films that they were passionate about. And Francis and George found, after coming to Denmark, naming his company American Zoetrope, he said San Francisco Bay Area gave him enough distance from Hollywood to make his own films and give inspiration to other filmmakers and young filmmakers to make their own films. So part of my job, not only as the film archivist, but is also to curate two museums that we have. One in Geyserville that deals with Francis Ford Coppola's personal film collection. The stuff that he's made over the last 60 years. Francis is an archivist himself. He's never thrown anything away because he saw that back in the very beginning, studios did throw a lot of things away. And from props, costumes to actual film elements, he made sure he kept everything. A lot of it was economics because he wanted to use it again for his next film. But the other thing is that Francis, when, as I mentioned earlier, that he went to Denmark, and that's how he got inspired to name his company American Zoetrope, because he saw a Danish company called Film that had a wonderful collection of magic lanterns and zoetropes, and he was able to find a collection of magic lanterns and put it on display in his house in his winery up in Napa to educate people that have no idea how cinema was ever founded and began. So we have two places that we try to educate people about where our companies come from and where our field has come from. To begin, American Zoetrope has a film library. Francis is one of the very few people that own his own collection of films, from Conversation Apocalypse Now, One from the Heart, Outsiders. He's one of the few filmmakers that retained and fought to keep the rights to his films. And about 10 years ago, we started working on our own restorations. We contracted out with a lot of labs that were great, but Francis felt that he could do it in-house, much like the spirit of American Zoetrope, that they were young, scrappy guys that could do anything in-house and learn the process themselves. And so we went in and started with Cotton Club was the very first film that we started taking on. And then we a little bit did his first film, Dementia 13. And then we said, okay, we're not doing too bad here. Then we'll try to do Apocalypse Now, which we brought to Bologna in 2019. We got it back here. So to go to that brings us to The Godfather. The Godfather came to us as I had mentioned earlier, that The Godfather, our film library, we own our own collection. However, there's a number of films that we don't own, such as The Godfather, and we have collaborated with many studios to work on those films, and Godfather was one of them. Andrea Callis was inspirational. She was the one at the Paramount Film Studios that called us about 5 years ago and said that they're wanting to work on The Godfather, but it will need a lot of time to prepare for it for the 50th anniversary. So if we can play video one now, we can introduce Andrea and Laura, and she can start giving you a brief introduction of what the problems were with Godfather.
With regards to the original negative, prior to it being put into the fold vault, which essentially arrested its deterioration, portions of it had started to, break down. It's a 50-year-old element. So I'm glad that we were able to scan it at the point at which we did. For the restoration in 2007, there was a CRI, and that's a color reversal internegative. We had of the entire feature, and that was used as a secondary element to fill in places where the negative was missing or compromised. Now, more of our hero element for a secondary element was the separations, because the technology to scan and recombine them was better. We also found a pretty reasonable amount of additional original negative for opticals and things like that, where we had not had that in 2007.
The 50 years of Godfather, it's amazing to think that a film from 1972 that's been loved over so long was very close to being destroyed. And as Laura talked about, this film needed amount of time. There was so many restorations over the last few years, but it's still missing material. It's still in bad shape. And so every time we do a restoration, we bring it up a little, we raise the bar up a little bit. But I want to talk a little bit about the path, the negative that it went through. Back in 1972, the original negative was cut and conformed for dye transfer printing in an auto-select single-strand format. There was no A-B rolls conformed for this film. The single strand was a very hard process, but used for sort of optical effects at that time, but it was for making dye transfer prints. But it was very, very hard on the negative, and it started breaking down the film. Creating dye transfer prints would have helped avoid wear and tear on the original negative and should have protected the film in addition to providing beautiful IB Tech release prints. But when Godfather 2 was released, it would become the last Technicolor release before the plant shut down in Hollywood. And because of the success of Godfather 2, people wanted to see the first Godfather again. But now that the Technicolor plant was closed, they couldn't send the negative to the plant, so they had to find another lab that could deal with it. The Godfather 1 negative was then sent to a lab that could handle an auto-select negative and make 35 mm prints on Eastman color stock, beginning to break down the original negative. And these are two illustrations of almost every head, tail shot of Godfather. Every scene would have either huge amount of tapes, splice, glue, tears, scratches, everything. So it started breaking down very, very early on. The negative sat from the 70s to about 1997, where the first attempt at a photochemical restoration occurred. 1997 became the most destructive period for the negative. Not that long ago, but that period, 97, became the period where it was in such bad shape. The perfs, the shots were so scratched that they actually just cut a lot of the negative out and replaced it with dupe negative. So there was a cascade of events that would take the negative down a rabbit hole. First, the single strand negative was cut and conformed into AB rolls. A lot of the timings for the fades and dissolves were destroyed when this conform was done. The perforations that were still intact in the 70s started ripping apart. Shots started tearing and then were replaced with a dupe negative. And what's interesting is like the first reel, though a wedding scene in Godfather, if you're familiar, hopefully, is completely replaced. There's no original negative in that reel. So, one thing on this chart, I'll see this leading into the next slide. In 2007, the foundational work, the first digital restoration occurred. This document was created in 2007 to evaluate the original negative and see exactly what was cut into it, so they could understand what they needed to look for. And if you can see on the left-hand corner, left-hand side, all that was replaced in '97. That shot, and you can description on the right. Now, on the right column is what in 2007 they went back and found material to replace the work they did in '97. So you could see that they used a CRI. Sometimes they found OCN, the original camera neg, for it. So it became a patchwork of various elements at that period. So as I mentioned, 2007, 2008 became a very foundational period for Godfather. It was become a very serious effort to actually try to go and find all the original negative that had been cut. Fortunately, a lot of the material still existed in various cans that Bob Harris, who was key to this work, Bob and Gordy Willis, who was still alive at that time, came in and put in a team together to research where all the stuff had gone. They found what they could, but they couldn't find everything. So let's see. So now you say, well, you did 2007. Why do we want, after 13, 14 years, why are we doing it again? Well, Bob Harris was able to bring it to a very, very good level, but there was still missing material. And there was still material that they couldn't repair at that time. The YCMs didn't register properly back in 2000. They didn't have that great hardware to deal with it at that period. So there are things that we could improve on that they weren't able to do in 2007. And Paramount had made the decision to go back into the vaults and go through every can from Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Godfather 3, Godfather Epic, Godfather Trilogy, everything. And the film had been cut so many different times. There was a period, I don't know if it ever came to Europe, but there was a period where they put Godfather 1 and Godfather 2 in chronological order. And that also helped destroy a little bit of the negative in the cut, and things went missing during that period. So Paramount put together two guys, Jeffrey Osmore and Chuck Woodfield, and put them on the case to actually do all the detective work. And if we could play video 2, they can talk a little bit about how they approached the process.
My first task is to try to find the corresponding production paperwork. Fortunately for the Godfather films, for Godfather 1, we have the original handwritten line script, which is an amazing artifact unto itself.
The line script, they've meticulously written down the setups, where the camera is. They mark what scenes from the script covered, and they have a little description about lenses, about whether it's a good or bad take.
You'll have circled takes. So those are the takes that the director has indicated are the ones that he would like the editors to work with. So that's a good indicator for me when I'm digging through the inventory. I've narrowed down my search already based on this 50-year-old paperwork.
It was a real cooperative effort between our team in terms of pulling what was needed, sending it to our preservation team, who are having this stuff scanned, and then sending it to James up in American Zoetrope so that it could be cut in.
So when Chuck and Jeffrey was able to locate a good amount of material, and I'll show one chart here, that this is now a chart that takes what Bob did in 2007 and line up what we could find today. And you can see that either back in 2007, they used the CRI, but now we could use the YCM masters because we could get them to register properly. Or in the last shot here, we were able to find the original negative, and Bob was only able to use the CRI. So we were able to at least get it back. Maybe he got the negative back to 98%, and we're about 99. But still, there are a mix of materials still left in that are completely destroyed or lost. So as Chuck had said, when the material was found and located, it was then scanned at MPI and then shipped up to me in San Francisco where I did the cleaning. And then I would send that material back down to be colored, and the final deliverable elements would be done at MPI in Burbank. So I want to show a few little sort of restoration clips of what we were able to do, how it compares to 2007, and how it looks in 2020, and just show you sort of that evolution of how things progress. So bear with me, we have like 4 clips, so this is where I can shut up a bit and you can watch. So video 3, please. So this is 1997, this is sort of the 97 effort. And then Bob's effort, which stabilization, but you can see the stabilization is still not quite there versus the 2022. And the new color. Opticals, I'll show you more about the opticals, but a lot of the original negative for the opticals were located and found. All in the effort to try to make this as much as the original negative, because it's hard when you have a patchwork of CRI, YCMs, all that color, all that resolution, all that it's a different, so it doesn't cut very well from scene to scene. Let's do, let's see, that was video 3. Let's do video 4. Again, now just focusing on 2007 with the wedding. This was what we found in the negative. That was still in 2007. And Paramount was able to locate the camera negative. The right on the side is not color corrected just yet, so that's why it looks a little bit different. So just notching it up a little bit in the quality that was found in the other negative, so we were able to bring that shot back to the original. And we'll go to the next one, 5, after this. Here we got a CRI. And now we chose to use the YCM instead because it registers better and the color actually cut better with the other original negative. The stabilization a little bit still, so we could prove. And a lot of the jitter comes from because the perforations were just torn. It was hard to get it to register back in 2007. So better scanning technology, better software to handle that 13 years later. This is to show another optical. Paramount was able to find the original VistaVision negative that made this optical. A dupe negative was what was cut into the original negative. Again, Bob had a very difficult time going through all the cans at that time. He was just one person. And he found a lot of stuff, but there was still yet more to uncover. And Paramount spent 13 years really kind of getting in and getting a handle of their collection. So you can see there is a noticeable improvement. And then when this is done, we'll go to video 6. Here, so this shows you a bit of some of the work that we did in Godfather 2. Nice. If there was anything nice about COVID, is that we were able to do the work because a lot of the labs were shut down or they didn't have enough personnel to do it, and so they asked us to kind of, could you lend a hand with Godfather 1. Original mission was us to do work on Godfather 3, but it sort of snowballed during COVID that they asked us to kind of work on Godfather 1 and then Godfather 2. You can see there's still a lot of dirt, sparkles that still was yet to be addressed. So that's, again, we could make a little bit more of an improvement on that. It's such an, obviously, it's such an important shot for us that the resolution here is key to see what he's seeing out the window and being clear. And so it was important for Francis to have Paramount locate the original negative for this and rebuild that optical. Okay, we probably got the point. So you can end it. So when Paramount approached us in 2017, it's a common thing. When I was here last time in 2019, I was here for Apocalypse Now Final Cut. And I said to the audience, you know, when Francis looks at a restoration, he's looking at a restoration, but that's something that was done for him in the past. You know, it's nice. He wants to restore and make sure that these films are looking as best as possible, but what's interesting to him is how to tell the story differently. And so a lot of these restorations become a conversation of what new we could do with the films. We've always made sure that we offer all the original versions of the film, Apocalypse Now Redux, Apocalypse Now Final Cut. And so Godfather 3 was one on his list that he felt needed to be worked on. And he felt that after 30 years, even with Apocalypse, that maybe people could look at it without thinking of Godfather 1 or Godfather 2 and just look at it at its own. So let's play one final clip with Francis actually introducing what his vision is for Godfather 3. Video clip 7, please.
Hello, I'm Francis Coppola, and I would like to tell you a little bit about my experience working on the third Godfather film, what was released as The Godfather Part 3. The third film, Mario Puzo and I, when we wrote it, had called it The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. And because of Paramount Pictures' kindness in allowing me to revisit this project, I have re-edited it, and I have given it what really isn't a new title, but rather the original title, Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. In musical terms, a coda is sort of like an epilogue. It's a summing up, and that's what we intended the movie to be. And so you'll see a film which has a different beginning, has a different ending, which makes the title all the more clear. And many scenes throughout have been repositioned, and the picture has been given, I think, a new life. And I think it provides an entirely new experience, which does in fact act as a coda to the first two films, a summing up, almost an illumination of what the two films meant. So here, as a result of the opportunity Paramount Pictures has given me to achieve what Mario and I had intended, is The Godfather coda, The Death of Michael Corleone.
So 1990, when he was making this film, he was under a lot of pressure to meet a Christmas deadline. And for Francis, he was like, okay, I'll meet the deadline, I'll turn in a film, but it's not what I want it to release, which is astounding that, you know, he was just working for that deadline, and the minute the film was released, he went back to cut it again. And that's pretty much what everybody saw after that. Very few people remember the theatrical version. So the 30 years was sort of that second cut. But the other issue with Godfather 3 is that because they were under such under the gun to get this film finished, is that they did some shortcuts technically, that they didn't do an A/B roll printing. They took the opticals and married them, composited them together, and made a dupe negative and cut that in just to save time and get it out. So that was something that they could have done back then, but didn't, but decided today to go back and rescan all the opticals and redo them, so they're at least of the same quality of the original negative. So I want to show one more difference between Godfather, the video 8, to show you sort of what they did in 2007. Bob wasn't really, or Gordy was involved in this remaster back in 2007. So Francis wanted to go back now to really do a proper restoration of the film. And you can see on the left the stabilization. Notice color. We were also getting this red in the skies. The face tones look sunburned. The red was never prevalent in any other source before this, so it was, we deemed, or the colorist at the time was saying that what they were using to color correct on monitoring, it is changed, and for some reason it translated more red. But you can see that the skin tones are far on the red side, more sunburned. The other interesting thing going back to Godfather 1 is that, you know, when we were looking for a reference print, there was no original print. The only original print of Godfather 1 and 2 that we could find on IB Tech prints were at the Academy. Godfather 1 was pretty good, and that's what Gordy used in 2007, what we also used. However, Godfather 2, there is no great color reference. And he just looks absolutely sunburned. We were astounded. It's like, how did it translate so differently? Because not even we had a great reference print of the Godfather 3, and it just never looked like that. So, okay. Though one thing I really want to cover is sort of, you know, even photochemical restorations introduce problems that were maybe never intended to. There was always artifacts of doing all restorations. And even in digital restoration, there's considerable artifacts that we have to be on guard with. I call them fingerprints or artifacts, and they're caused by restoration artists. In one picture, I don't know if you can see very well, but there is a smudge up there, and that's sort of a restoration artist's fingerprint. He was trying to cover some dirt, but the grain doesn't match. Or on the lower, they copied or cloned some part of a frame 2 frames away of the flag, and they missed it. And the flag is replicated where they were trying to clean some dirt. So we see these from previous restorations, and so we try to make sure that we're not replicating that. Let's see. One other thing is grain. Grain's always an issue. I try not to do any grain management at all. I try to keep the film looking as much as the original. The DCP here, what Gordy and Robert Harris approved back in 2007, maintains that grain. There's the original scan. But you have to have a discussion with whoever's doing the finishing, that sometimes you'll get it completely scrubbed. There is no grain. And that's a dialogue you always have to have with the lab, because this shouldn't translate into some completely different thing that and become completely away from the look of film. And so as a restoration artist myself, I try to make sure that I'm not erasing the aesthetic of film, and it still has that look and feel and texture of that original release. So to follow up, and I want to get some questions soon because I know we're running out of time. For Francis, these restorations, these new presentations, as we call it, the death of Michael Corleone is a new presentation. He loves to be able to take advantage of new technology. HDR is very exciting to him. Dolby Atmos was exciting to try to use it during Apocalypse Now with the helicopters. This speakers on the roof made sense to use that technology. And this is a way that we have great film fans that made the film live for this long, but we're also conscious that we need to make sure that it still lives on for another 50 years and that new audience. So he loves to explore that, keeping the original, but also trying to push a new film, tell the story in a different way, present it in a different way. And so it's nice that he also tries to play that and offer that to a new audience. And so I'm glad that you're here, because I get a little embarrassed in talking to the same people, because we've seen these before and afters, and I'm sorry talking to people I've seen 1,000 times. But talking to someone, an audience that may not be familiar, is more rewarding, because the film is fragile. We almost lost a film that is just 50 years old. It's been important to our culture, and it's been around for so long. And it's a shame that people don't realize that. They think we could transfer it digitally and it's going to be protected for life. It's not that way. And we have to continue restoring these films. And you could see that even a last restoration, there's still more improvement you can do. So I thank everyone for coming, and I think we have time for
maybe one question.
2. I think we got, is it 11 o'clock, right?
Yes, but we have to do the setup for the next.
Oh, we got 12 minutes, so let's try to get a couple questions. Who has a question? Please. Yes.
Do you think that some of the redness that was in the 2007 restoration was because Gordon Willis was kind of...
No, Gordon Wilson was not involved in that color correction. Not at all. No. That was clear. And Robert, they didn't put much attention. It was only the attention was really on Godfather 1 and 2 at that time. Yeah. Another? Yes.
How do you feel like restoring things like The Godfather will affect future generations and how they see films like The Godfather?
Say that one more time.
How do you feel like restoring The Godfather is going to affect the future generations? Do you feel like it's going to have a different effect?
If it has anything, I hope that they're going to want to see it again, and it continues. I mean, that's the most important thing, is that the audience finds it. The worst thing that can be done is that it still looks like an old film. A general audience doesn't care. And I have to be cognizant that we love film. We love it for a certain reason. We love how it was originally looked, but a lot of audience just doesn't care. When they start seeing it's an old film, it still has scratch. Silent films, it took forever to get people out of that idea that they were not black and white and they were not silent. And that's important. So we have to be very aware of making it the best presentation for it. So
Thank you.
hopefully that answers. One more.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Do you think there is something like a final restoration for a film? In other words, is this restoration of the 50th anniversary, is it possible that in the next 20, 30 years it's going to be restored again? And what could be, what could you imagine?
Yeah, I think we're slowing down a little bit. For Godfather something, I don't think we can ever say it's truly finished because it's never going to be what it was. 1972 version is lost. I mean, that's it. It's so much has been done to it, but at least we got it so close, and I feel that maybe they find some more stuff. You know, yes, I don't think a restoration's ever going to be done, but I always say we got the restoration to a certain level. I feel that after 4K and this is great, and that they should use my restoration to offer new presentations. They might whatever new HDR or whatever new thing that comes out. They may explore that, but at least it's derived on the work that we did today. Okay. One more? Can we have one more?
Last one.
I got one prize for someone. What year? Raise your hand. Don't shout it out. And this is probably an easy question, but at least I'll get it. What year was Godfather first released? Godfather 1. I know you know. You in the way back. Yes, you. No, you in the mask. Yeah, you. Wait. I'll give it to you. That was Godfather 2. One more question. You over there. Yes.
I was just wondering, was any
Use the mic.
Oh, okay. Was any like the content like scene-wise, like are we missing any of the scenes from the 1972, or like do we have like all the content? It's just about like repairing the film itself.
For Godfather 2?
No, the original.
The original? So say the first part of the question.
Were you able to like recover all the scenes and like the content? So we're missing content?
We're still missing the one chart that I showed from the last restoration, 2022. There are still shots missing that we're using CRI or we're using YCMs. No, it's probably 99% there, still about 1% of negative missing.
Okay, and were you saying some of that was from the wedding scene?
Yes, the last part of Reel 1, 10 minutes of it, is completely removed. And I would say Reel 8, where the bosses all come together, all the families, all the heads come, that was completely removed. The dinner scene where Michael goes to shoot Salazzo, completely destroyed. So, but a lot of that negative had been replaced. Am I going to get the axe here? Thank you. If you want to ask me more questions outside, I'll be around for a while, but I appreciate you coming out.